Hi people, it is Mikefield here. Today we'll try to compare all the healer classes and we'll see how exactly they're performing in Mythic Plus. We'll have a look at those classes from two different perspectives and we'll consequently create two different tier lists. So we'll have a look at the kind of top performance, so like the top 20 players, people who play competitive World of Warcraft Mythic Plus dungeons, so the guys who are taking part in MDI and such. And we'll also have a look at the players who are at the lower ranks, so people who are just kind of struggling to complete their plus 10s and plus 15s. This being said, guys, that's basically going to be it for the video. If you do enjoy yourselves watching this, obviously, remember to leave me a comment. Remember to subscribe, smash the subscribe button below, and also leave me a like. And obviously this means that you will get some more of my awesome content coming into the future. We'll also have a join button below, so if you have some money lying around, you could support the channel a little bit and be generous. It's $3 a month to allow this channel to grow and thrive. Please consider that. This being said, let's go to the actual content, guys. Enjoy. So guys, first things first, let's have a look at the general player distribution. So let's see who is playing healers and what healers they're playing. And generally speaking, as far as the healer class population goes at all levels, we have this very clear picture where we have like a very large number of druid players, and relatively close behind there are shamans, and then we have paladins and priests. Actually, there's like a lot of priests, but they're split across two specs. We can assume that some of those numbers of the priests are going to be priests who are playing both Holy and Disc, right? That's a possibility. Finally, there are quite a few paladins and a relatively few monks. And this is basically that. The smaller number here is going to be the Holy Priests. The higher number here is going to be the Disc Priests. However, when you have a look at the very top of the ladder, things are actually shaping up to be quite different. So guys, what we'll be looking at first is the comparison head-to-head of the top 20 players for each and every healing spec there is in World of Warcraft. It's very important to notice that we're using the Raider IO scores here, which are calculated based on the highest keystone completed and on the timing that it took to actually get there, so to finish that keystone run. And those are obviously timed runs, all of them. Now, we'll be looking at quite a few various metrics. So top one, so how are the top players performing? And we'll obviously not be looking at this one exclusively because you may have this super committed player who's just way better than the competition. And just based on their pure skill and based on their pure effort, they are going to be ahead of everybody else. They might also be on those very strong teams. I mean, they may be kind of getting slightly carried by them, let's say. So we'll not be only looking at top one. We'll have a look at top 3 mean, we'll have a look at top 20 mean, and then we'll kind of eliminate the top 3 outliers, and we have a look at the top 17, except for the top 3 as well. So just kind of go into this. So the first thing that you see is actually that Resto Shamans are winning in all categories. So Resto Shamans seem to be just scaling extremely well. They seem to be doing very well in Mythic Plus, basically because of their very diverse set of abilities, their strong cooldowns, their ability to burst heal, their extremely good scaling with haste. And I think that's just simply why, and very high numbers, by the way, as well, and also the way that they can deal with Prideful. So Resto Shamans are just doing really well in all regards, basically, which means that they're going to be taking spot number 1. So in top 1, actually, we have a very solid Resto Shaman, Zelia 4, who is sitting very far ahead of the competition with 60 points. Then we have the Resto Druid and a Disc Priest sitting like about 50-60 points behind. And we could say that those players are actually almost equal, because 60 points, let's say, is not exactly that big of a difference. And it's possible for those specs to shoot up, maybe depending on the week that we'll have and such. So I think this is basically looking like the top 1 across those 3 classes is rather close. Now, when you have a Holy Paladin, however, 2,221 points, 100 points behind everybody else in top 3, meaning that maybe there is like some sort of a gap there. Maybe this is just about the player, maybe this is about the Holy Pally just requiring this extra bit of gear or just an extra bit of getting used to for the teams. Really not sure, but Holy Pallies have this extraordinary amount of damage basically they can dish out. So they are definitely just kind of climbing the ladders. We'll see it a bit later. Mistweavers, there is one very strong Mistweaver. This actually means there are actually like 4 good Mistweavers, and the rest of them this kind of are falling seriously behind. So this top 1 Mistweaver is an extraordinarily good player, and I think this might be the reason why he's performing so well. But as you look down the line, the numbers are showing that the average Mistweaver, even in top 20, is not exactly on par with their counterparts of those top 4 performing classes. And Holy Priest, same story actually, but there is no exceptionally strong player even there, or maybe it's just not possible to push that high up with Holy Priest because the spec just plays that way. So I believe, Holy Priest is not exactly a spec made for Mythic Plus, and for that reason, they are going to be lagging severely behind, even in the top 1 position. Top 3, once again, very similar trend where, Disc Priest, Resto Druid, and Resto Shaman are very far ahead. Holy Paladin slightly behind, and Mistweaver again 200 points behind the Holy Pally, and Holy Priest even further behind everybody else, like almost 200 points behind the Mistweavers, for already not doing too hot. You can see also there is like this kind of leveled out ground between these 3 classes, and that, Resto Shaman again is about 80 points ahead of the competition, to 100 even, though Holy Paladins seemingly are catching up. And this is actually visible in top 20, where we have like quite a few more Holy Paladins. So they are basically the second most powerful class based on this, very close to Resto Druids, however, right? And kind of funnily enough, Disc Priests are falling behind quite a little bit here. So looks like the top 3 or top 4 performing Disc Priests are really great. Or maybe actually if you look at the numbers, it's going to be the top 2. And if you look further down the list, it seems like, if you're able to master the class, or if your team is able to play around your damage and the potential that Disc Priest has, you will achieve great things. However, if you're not doing that great, you are actually going to be among the weakest 3 classes if, again, you're not, one of the top performers, or like your team is not one of the top performing ones already at this level. Now, if you look at the Resto Druid, Holy Paladin are actually very close together in terms of the scoring, and the Mistweavers and Holy Priest, again, very far behind the competition. If you take out the outliers, if you take out the top 3, it is even more pronounced that Disc Priests are falling behind. So Holy Paladins clearly in the lead once again, like second place secured, actually 100 points behind Resto Shamans. Resto Druids slightly behind the Holy Pallies, and Disc Priests very, very far behind. So 120 points behind the Holy Pally, and about 80 points, 90 points behind the Resto Druids. Then the Mistweavers are again not doing too well alongside the Holy Priests. Now, that's basically that for the numbers, for the kind of the Radar IO scores, but there is like more metrics in place, so just have a look at them as well. So now we'll have a look at how different classes are performing at different levels of competition. So we'll look at Mythic 10, Mythic 15, and Mythic 20 class distribution. So we'll see how much of a volume does each class take up in those different distributions. We saw that basically Druids were the most popular class overall. If we kind of up this a little bit and we go to Mythic plus 10, it seems that once again this kind of the ladder here is going to be dominated by the Druids and by Shamans, who are both timing the keys, because those are the timed keys shown here. So the timed runs are mostly done by those two classes. So they are probably the most versatile, they're kind of basic healers to some extent, and they're performing extremely well. You can see here again, there are quite a few of those Disc Priests here and quite a few of those Holy Priests. Paladins are performing rather well as well, and once again there are some Mistweavers as well here, but there are like relatively few of them. So the sample here is small, and probably this might be the reason why our table in the end that we were looking at, the top 20 table, is a bit skewed, because we have like way fewer Mistweavers than every other class. If you look at top 15, however, it seems that this is going to change a little bit once again. So this shapes up to be plus 15 seems to be dominated by the Resto Shamans, and the Resto Druids are falling behind. This means that maybe it's just a bit harder to play the Resto Druid at this higher level. And interestingly enough, the Paladins are also catching up. So if you go to like this kind of more, I think like this is a very breakpoint at which we have a lot of scaling, right? So people are getting up and they're getting like very strong items, and Paladins are actually just, the better items they have, they are kind of snowballing, right? So they're getting like very solid heals, they get like very high damage output as well, and this actually pushes them ahead. You can see that both Mistweavers and the Holy Priests are getting pushed out at this point. So there are like relatively few people pushing up to plus 15. And this is kind of interesting because plus 15 is kind of final achievement breakpoint. And if you're able to get like all those dungeons completed, you get this achievement a lot of people are hunting for. So I feel like this might be kind of the most interesting bit here. So if you're like a normal player, you'd be looking at this And if you're a Mistweaver or Holy Priest, you'll be kind of concerned about your class. You can see that, you can quite safely assume that those classes like the Disc Priest, the Resto Shaman, Resto Druid, and Holy Paladin are quite comfortably pushing those keys still, and you're able to get to those level 15 keystones completed. However, when you look at the, those weaker healers, there are not so many actually present here. So this number has shrunk quite significantly, right? And this proportion of people completing those keystones has dwindled in the favor of those more meta classes. And if you look at top 20, actually, there's a very interesting shift here. So if you compare those two, you can see that actually Resto Druids are not that strong at plus 20. So if you're trying to be this super high-end player, Resto Druid might not necessarily be a class for you. Looking like it kind of is shaping up to be exactly that. So there are actually very many Paladins. There are quite a few Holy Paladins, and this is probably because of their damage output. Like Holy Palis have crazy damage with the very strong gear and with the proper support and play of their team, where they don't have to be healing that much. They can actually provide emergency heals and actually dish out ridiculous amounts of damage. So Holy Palis and Resto Shamans are actually going to be the kind of taking up the most space. So the most of those keystones at plus 20 are going to be completed by those two classes. Now, if you look at the Holy Priests, they're completely gone. Basically, there are 0 Holy Priests completing plus 20, which is really unfortunate for the class, but that's just what it is, for the spec that is. And actually, there are still quite a few monks, okay? So monks are at least capable of completing this high tier of keystones, but there are like relatively few of them compared to the rest of the population. Plus 20 is really elite level right now. There are very few people who are capable of doing this. Probably like a couple hundred at best, I guess. And maybe might be wrong here, but it is very elite of a neighborhood, let's say. Now I'd like us to look at the best players, at like best of the best as well. So we'll be moving on to the next bit of the video now. So here we have the top completed keystones ever, and we are sitting at the point at which people are still unable to time their 23s. However, there are quite a few teams who have successfully been able to push their 22s. And you can see that this distribution we're talking about is exactly here. So you have some shamans, like the majority of those players are actually going to be shamans. There are quite a few different ones here. There is a single Resto Druid. There are 2 different Disc Priests, and there are 2 different Paladins. So there is no sign of the Mistweavers. Obviously, Holy Priests can't be here because they're not really completing the plus 20s yet. Now, if you look at the competitive scene, however, this image is going to be rather similar to what we've just seen as well. So as we look into the Mythic Invitational competitive Mythic Plus Dungeon tournament, we can see again the distribution remains quite similar. So there are rather few at the very top. There are rather few druids. There are very many Disc Priests who are obviously there, and Paladins as well, who are obviously there because certain dungeons such as Halls of Atonement might not require that much healing, but they will require a lot of damage. So that's why we have the Paladins and the Disc Priests actually taking up those top positions here. So this utility that those classes are able to provide seems to be reigning supreme. The shaman distribution, there are quite a few of different shamans here, both in China and in EU. So that's another, but you can see how prevalent those damaging healers are in the competitive scene. So once again, actually, it's kind of funny because in the Chinese scene there are so many shamans here, the top 10 for these Halls of Atonement runs. However, as you can see, the top 10 in Europe has been occupied by mostly the Disc Priests and the Holy Palis, and also the timings of those are relatively different, right? You can see those are extremely fast runs. I have no idea how those guys are able to achieve this. I would actually want to check the streams. Maybe this it looks like almost some sort of a back 14 minutes 50 to complete Halls of Atonement on Tyrannical, Inspiring, Necrotic, and Prideful is absolutely insane. I don't know how those guys are doing this. It seems to be the case that they are just the priests and the palis are just providing enough damage for them to push those keystones extremely fast, or maybe just facilitate some sort of crazy pulls. Now, as you look at the Trials Aspires of Ascension as well, again, the distribution seems to be in favor of those high damage classes with a few shamans in there, and some and actually some druids as well. There are actually quite a few druids here in the spires, which is probably because this is a longer dungeon that might require a bit more healing altogether. Obviously, this might vary also based on the affixes, right? So that's something you should always take into consideration, that those stats might change when we get into the next week, which probably will be fortified, right? And this might shape up the standings of those healers once again. So, people who have been able to, or have not been able to push before because of their gear, might have obtained the gear right now, and they might be pushing their class, and maybe just, this will shift the scales a little bit, maybe in favor of, once again, those Pallies and those Disc Priests. We shall see. Or maybe the stronger healers will perform better in Fortified, which I would assume might be the case indeed. Okay, so now is the time to decide what exactly is going to be the best healer. I think we know the answer. I'd say, like, for normal play, definitely if you're looking for the most powerful healer there is, just go with your Resto Shaman, because this is just ultimately the strongest healer. You will perform very well at all levels. If you're trying to scale yourself up, you will still be able to do so. And this kind of makes this class a no-brainer for normal play. And if you look at the S tier, I would kind of say that honestly Druid is going to be the second best one, because when we look into statistics, it seemed obvious that the Druids are performing well at all levels. And up to plus 10 where like most players actually probably stop, or up to plus 15 where most players definitely will stop, this class is going to still carry you through. It's going to be a very solid caster, very much desired by a lot of teams as well. So you obviously do not bring the Bloodlust, so this might require some adjustments in terms of the team compositions, but still there are some other classes capable of providing Bloodlust, so you'll be definitely fine picking the Resto Druid. Now, in the top, if you go into the A tier, I would say we should probably put Paladins and Priests over there. So Disc Priests and Pallies are gonna go here. This is because, first of all, they have like huge potential of going up. So if you are a good player, you can definitely just make a difference and make the push, right? So nothing is actually an obstacle for you. They are going to be a bit harder than their Resto counterparts, so the Resto Shaman, Resto Druid, simply because you have to be doing damage to be healing. And this is especially true for the Paladin, because your healing is actually relatively low compared to those two other classes, but you're making up for this with extreme amounts of damage and a lot of utility that you bring, right? So also, it requires you to stay in melee, which means that Paladin is going to be very difficult to play. I think might be more difficult than the Disc Priest in the end, simply because you have to stick in melee and just try to do your best in there. Which might be kind of different for a lot of players, since the only other healer that has to be doing this is going to be the Mistweaver, which naturally is going to be in the B tier now. Honestly, I would say there's like a very large rift between these two classes and the Mistweavers, which I would say kind of warrants us putting the Mistweavers in the C tier, because honestly, like, I have seen a lot of Mistweavers in Mythic Plus already, and they're like grossly underperforming in terms of healing, and their damage output isn't that high, which is not true for Paladins, who are going to perhaps be lagging behind in terms of damage quite a bit, but they're going to be lagging behind in terms of healing, but their damage will be rather significant. Now we're gonna put the Holy Priest in D, since it seems that this class is not that viable, and it has this very viable and very strong counterparts. If you're playing Priest, you probably might want to be playing Disc Priest for Mythic Plus. Doesn't mean that, Holy Priest is garbage. They're actually very, very strong in raiding, but in Mythic Plus specifically, they seem to be the weakest performer in Season 1. And it doesn't seem that things are changing, even despite the gearing that those classes are able to obtain. Now, if you go into the hardcore play, however, things will shake up a little bit differently, I believe. So once again, I would say, Shaman is going to land in top 1. And if you look at the S tier, however, I would say that these two lads are going to go up a little bit, simply because if you're trying to be a hardcore player, those seem to be better performing classes. I might even go as far as saying that, maybe Disc Priest is going to be an A tier, and no, this doesn't sound right, because I don't think like the Druid will be, would be categorized as a character that tends to underperform at the highest level. So if you're like a hardcore player who's trying to push for plus 20s, you can definitely still do this as a Resto Druid. It will probably just take a little bit more effort than those two classes will. And obviously Shaman seems to be effortlessly going into plus 20s, so I feel like they might be a little bit overpowered, even though I'm a Resto Shaman player myself. I think like Resto Shamans are just ridiculously strong right now, and they will definitely go up there. And if you're a hardcore player, I think you'll probably never consider playing those two classes, sadly. At this point anyway. Balance patch might change a lot of things here, but as of now, I feel like if you're a kind of hardcore player, if you want to kind of push your highest keystones available, you will never consider playing a playing a Mistweaver Monk or a Holy Priest, simply for that reason, that they are just not performing at all And this is visible across the board, but specifically at the very top level, where they're just very far behind, not able to push the highest keystone, and not even competitive with the top performers from the other classes. This being said, guys, that's basically it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. By the way, please remember there's an option for you to subscribe, so smash that sub button. There's a like button available for you as well, so that you can just kind of tell me that you enjoyed the video or you didn't. And please comment, tell me what you think. By the way, there is an option to join the channel. There's a join button below your video, and you're actually going to be able to pay me $3 per month to support the channel, to keep the content flowing, and you know, to keep the streamer or the content producer happy. And this is basically $3 only, so I recommend that you guys do this if you have some spare buck. Now, this being said, thank you to all the supporters. The names should be on the screen right now. And this being said, guys, stay healthy, stay safe. I hope you enjoyed the video, and there is more for you. Let me know if there is something specific that you'd like to see later in the comments. This being said, see you later, guys. Bye-bye.